You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Whether you're joining us from the radio or the TV side this evening over on the live stream or the podcast later, this is the very, very last episode of season 1 of the Tony Kinnett Cast. Tomorrow, a lot of stuff changes. But I digress. Let's get into the news. You don't want to hear that right now. A massive surge in the stock market today. And I do mean basically over the last couple of days, all of the momentum that was lost by the beginning of the U.S.-Iran Operation Epic Fury has been made all the way up and now moving past to new records for the S&P 500 as well as the NASDAQ. Here was some of the initial coverage of that today.
The S&P 500, can we put that up? We've got the NASDAQ down there. The American stock market just hit a record high. Isn't that something? Not just since the war began, but it's the highest it's ever been. Right now, it hit highs as that press briefing was ongoing. There hasn't just been a calm in the markets. Now there's actually a rally happening.
I think it shows the fundamental strength of the American economy. And really, here we are on tax day. That big, beautiful.
I hear you, Kevin McCarthy. I'm going to let you finish, but there's kind of a more simple explanation than kind of a long, Fox News correspondent style answer to it. Carolyn Levitt also came out today and announced that the markets were doing rather superb, that tax day was doing well. You would expect this from the White House press secretary. Here she is.
With tax day officially here, the numbers prove these tax cuts have been nothing short of extraordinary. More than 53 million filers claimed at least one of President Trump's signature new tax cuts. The average refund this filing season is more than $3,400. The Trump administration has issued more refunds and larger refunds than in any year of the history of our country.
So she's very, very excited. And we're going to get to some of the beyond the kind of the excitement here. But I do want to point out when I make the claim that the United States is recovering pretty well from the initial fear and concern regarding the Operation Epic Fury. Again, I'm not joking. You can actually see the graph here yourself. This being the S&P 500 index, which was almost to basically it had a previous all-time high of just over 7,000 points. And then after sinking fairly, down to the, I believe the mid fives during the U.S. Iran Operation Epic Fury, didn't make it into the fives, into the low 6,000s. In just 2 weeks, it had a massive 10% recovery and hit a new high of 7,022. And the reason that you see all of the recovery in a short amount of time, all of the major media outlets who told you that the United States is losing and it's all over, it's terrible, we're all going to die, here we go, it's terrible, it's horrible, all that stuff was bogus. It's not true. The major collapse of the U.S. economy that was promised didn't happen. And additionally, it turns out that the Trump administration did actually have a plan for things. And the New York Times reports that the stock markets believe that things are going to end one way or the other, and it's not going to ramp into some Iraq, Afghanistan style thing. I know. I too am shocked that the thing some of us were telling you for quite a long time ended up turning out the way that the scoreboard indicates. Now, really that's due to some of the map movement. We're going to get to some of this. That's a lot of boats heading to and fro the Gulf of America. But we're going to get to that in a minute because it's tax day. So before we get into some of the foreign policy news, let me give you some of the updates on what we expect regarding gas prices and a pretty important message on a major shift in U.S. economic policy, kind of a public service announcement from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Because when we're talking about whether it's foreign policy news or about today being tax day, all right, today being the big day for the economy, this makes or breaks the economic momentum that could change the midterm. All of it, every single bit of the major news today is wrapped up in Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. And by the way, that's good news. That's very, very good news. Scott Bessent has a way of saying things that the American voter likes, according to the polls. He has a way of saying things that the economy, the stock market, the brokers, the traders, bond markets, whenever he starts talking instead of Peter Navarro, things do pretty well. So first of all, kind of a sizable change in the entire U.S. economy noted here by Bessent.
I want to encourage everyone out there watching today to change their withholding if they haven't already done so, because if you change your withholding, then you will get an automatic real wage increase on a weekly or a monthly basis, and you will be able to keep more of your money this calendar year.
That is a big deal. And I'm not just saying that as someone who has once messed with the how much is taken out of every single paycheck and set aside for taxes. And I have been slapped by I didn't pull out enough for the state of Indiana taxes. What Scott Bessent is making the case of now, hey, you need to go in and change things because taxes are substantially lower. And additionally, the gas prices, now we actually see Bessent making some kind of solid on-the-ground predictions as to when you're going to see gas prices back around the $3 mark, that crude oil price per barrel, the Brent, going down from where it is now, $94.95, down to $80, $70, and then after that, $60 a barrel. Here is Bessent making that prediction.
With a 3 in front of it sooner rather than later. It's Bank Week here in DC, so I've been meeting with a lot of my Middle Eastern counterparts, the finance ministers, and they all say that once the straits are open, they can start pumping again within 1 week.
So not by summer like Memorial Day, but maybe by Labor Day?
Again, I'm optimistic that sometime between June 20th and September 20th that we can have $3 gas again. And as I said this morning too, we are going to be watching the gas stations because they raise prices very quickly when when the crude oil prices went up. We hope they'll bring them down just as quickly.
So we'll take a look at this as time progresses. But if we do see a downward trend that continues to sink and you get around the end of Q3, that's right before election season, and well, midterm year off, everything's election season, but when everything really starts getting rather hot and heavy on the campaign trail, if gas prices really start to sink to kind of an all-time low for this administration, that is drastically going to change voters' perceptions. Voters have, and don't just take this from me, Democrat pundits will admit this as well, it's a common truism that Americans' political memories as far as momentum is concerned is very, very short. So if we do see things start to turn in a momentum building direction, again, not just, oh, there's a lot of opportunity out there, but actually seeing some things that are results based, it's probably going to be very unlikely if things get moving that Democrats not only don't take the Senate, may not even take the House. Now that brings us over to some of the flip side, because Democrats also have kind of a big tax day message. First and foremost, you may have seen on the screen passed by it here, Governor Kathy Hochul of New York is announcing more taxes. That's right. If you own a second home and you're stupid enough to have one of those if you have a second property and it's in New York, then she's going to slap you with one big spanking of a tax increase. She said today, quote, or I should say, the end of yesterday, if you can afford a multi-million-dollar second home in New York City, you can afford to join its residents in supporting the greatest city in the world. And it's not just for those who have multi-million-dollar properties like Bernie Sanders, for instance. No, this would be if you are an individual who has a home in, the Midwest, and then you may have a small business property in New York City, a retail front perhaps, a secondary location, an Airbnb property maybe. You are going to get clocked in the teeth with a major tax increase. We see the same thing over on the Californian side of things. Gubernatorial candidate Tom Steyer, he's now really feeling his oats now that Eric Swalwell has oofed himself right out of the gubernatorial race in Congress. And he only has to fight, obviously, the Republicans, but Katie Porter, whose qualifications include kind of looking like Phyllis from The Office, but being immensely less likable. And then number two, one of the reasons she's unlikable, she chucks boiling mashed potatoes at her staff. Truly one of the most abusive congressmen or women to have ever had staff in their office at any given time. And all of those things are on video. I mean, like, wretched woman. Even Count Olaf from a series of unfortunate events didn't treat young people this badly. So Tom Steyer, he's also got a message. He's like, here's how I'm going to get ahead. I'm going to appeal to the Californians. And we're going to talk about that over on the live stream radio crew. We'll catch you after your commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. So Tom Steyer, what's his big message? We need to charge more in taxes.
It's time for billionaires like me and big corporations to buy into the future of California and be willing to pay more. A lot of people in California are acting as if we have a zero-sum game, and they're defending their wealth.
Well, they do, because again, if you are going to say, look, Tony, you make $200,000 this next year, then we are going to tax you at 50%. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that I do not earn more than $199,000, because that is how everyone thinks. And by the way, if you are a billionaire and you are living in a blue state where they start charging more, or a millionaire or a 100,000aire. Again, the crews all the way from the local side like Mayor Zoran Mamdani or the governors like Gavin Newsom make it clear the millionaires are involved now too, the 100,000aires. We're just going to keep on going. And yes, if you own any kind of a business, that is absolutely being passed along to every consumer, and it is coming out of the paycheck of every employee. I mean, I guess if you want a California system where it is quite literally Cuba, you have either the wealthiest of the wealthy or you have the making the barest minimum wage poverty. This is the way to do it.
And they're trying to make sure that they minimize their taxes. I am not scared about paying more money. Working Californians are being priced out of this state.
No, working Californians are leaving the state because the tax code is way too restrictive.
It is not okay. We are creating more than enough money in this state for us all to succeed together without anybody suffering.
Here we go. Oh, yes. We all make so much that we can afford to force people to do this, that, and the other. That ain't how that works. That's not going to endear people to kind of the economy is the thing that Americans care about most. Anyone who tells you otherwise is ridiculous, because whether I like it or not, it is the thing that affects me day by day by day. It's the thing that drives people to the polls. Now, California's got a really, really bad problem afoot, and this would be the huge issue that they have over where the tax dollars in California are actually going. And we'll have to get to that here in a couple of minutes, because there are more Democrats with like bold, exciting takes. Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts is doing the exact same old thing. Old people yelling about taxes. Boy, that's a shot in the arm to get young people and anyone with a brain at all out to vote. Boy, yippee. Here's Elizabeth Warren. Same thing, different day.
You think it is a good outcome that Meta gets to save $3 billion, Amazon gets $4 billion, and to pay for it, millions of Americans lose their health care? That's your view as the CEO of the IRS?
So Elizabeth Warren, stepping forward, she's very, very upset. This big here said, Donald Trump cut health care for Americans so that Meta could get a $3 billion tax cut. Guys, Americans have never, ever, ever, ever bought this line. There is not one poll that indicates Americans believe that Congress is sitting there with a big pie in front of them. And then they say, we have this amount of money that could go to healthcare and education. We're going to take from that piece of pie and we're going to give it to Meta. One tax cut. Two. That's not how it works. And going into the year with this kind of an idea moving forward, they're trying to do the same thing with the military restock proposal right now. It ain't happening, Captain. It's not going to be any more exciting than it was the first 86 times you regurgitated the cat sick and fed it to me like oatmeal. Not going to be a thing here. Now that, again, because Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is all wrapped up in the economic news and the foreign policy news, let's give you a couple of updates, because as things in the Iran war, the Operation Epic Fury, the United States secondary Uno reverse blockade of Iran, as it continues, well, you're going to see a little bit less news about it. Because as things tend to get better, two things happen. First of all, people don't usually watch good news. And number two, folks on the left side of the aisle really, really don't seem to enjoy watching things that they said Trump was never going to do end up doing and doing pretty well. We're going to pick the radio crew up out of their commercial break. Don't go anywhere. A ton to cover tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast on this beautiful tax day, April 15th, 2026. Not only do we have some of the updates on the tax side and, of course, California using tax dollars, state and federal, in a rather disturbing way. We're going to get to that story here in just a bit. But there's quite a few updates out of the Middle East regarding why the economy is doing a lot better. And not just the NASDAQ, but the S&P 500, why we're starting to see the leader of the International Monetary Fund, kind of the huge European kind of globalist organizations that are really having a rough time. And it all boils down to when a lot of boats head to the United States for oil, instead of the Iranians saying we can turn off the tap at any time, instead of the Iranians saying we're going to let China through and maybe France, and everyone else can screw off, it turns out that when that is no longer an issue, that a lot of things change really, really quickly. So first of all, we saw the U.S. Navy give a final warning to all ships trying to get past the American secondary naval blockade in the Middle East. This is a warning to two groups, kind of three. Russia's not really sending a lot of boats right now, but to the Chinese and to Iran. Here's some of that audio. It's just pretty cool.
The U.S. has announced a formal blockade of Iranian ports and coastal areas. This is illegal action. All vessels are advised to immediately return to port if leaving and discontinue transit to Iran if that is your next port of call. Do not attempt to breach the blockade. Vessels will be boarded for interdiction and seizure transiting to or from an Iranian port. Turn around and prepare to be boarded.
And by the way, this did in fact happen at one point. There was an Iranian-flagged cargo vessel which attempted to evade the United States blockade after leaving Bandar Abbas, exiting the Strait of Hormuz, and trying to transit along the Iranian coastline. This is according to Central Command. A guided missile destroyer for the USS successfully redirected the vessel by saying, hey, want to know what it's like at the bottom of the Strait of Hormuz? You don't? Turn around. And then the vessel headed back to Iran. This would make 10 vessels now that have been turned around. 0 ships have broken through. You were told by major media outlets, you were told by pundits all over everywhere, that one weird uncle you've got on Facebook, boy, China's just going to get them all through. China's, Trump's going to taco, he's going to chicken out, and China's just going to sail through with the Panda Express. Yippee, it's going to be amazing for China. Nope, not happening. And the reason is because the United States has made, as we talked about in yesterday's episode regarding the Indonesia agreement, completely cutting China out of the Strait of Malacca. Right now, the Trump administration is doing everything that it can to remove any leverage that the Chinese have on the global economy, which means America sets the tone and everyone else is pretty much forced to sing along to the song sheet. You can see Trump actually making this case in a recent interview.
I saw some.
Hang on a second here. There we go.
Business. I didn't like seeing boats come out if they were doing business with Iran, but if they weren't, no boats came out. So now Iran is doing absolutely no business. And
so the president making it clear, no business to be made. Why no business to be made? Not just Iran, China.
Well, we're leading in AI because of me. We're leading. You know why? I'm letting them build their own electric power plants. They're becoming a utility. I said to Mark Zuckerberg, congratulations, you're in the electric business. Because if I didn't do, that was my idea actually. They're building these massive plants, and if they took it from the grid wouldn't be able to handle it. I said, no, if you want to build it, you have to build your own power, and then they will be giving excess power back into our grid. And these things are all under construction right now. So we're beating China on that. We're beating China on the economy. We have a great economy. Remember, if I didn't want to make that little journey to Iran, that was a journey. I said, we're going to have to do this for the good of the world.
Why? Because if China and Iran are able to leverage energy flow to the rest of the world, then that gives China the ability, anytime they want essentially to try to cut off the U.S. economy, to cut off allies that could create some kind of a distraction that allows China to make one kind of last gasp amid the declining reign of Xi Jinping to attempt to take Taiwan. Now, again, moving forward a little bit further into some of the other kind of wrap-up news on this information, the Senate has rejected a resolution, yet another one, to block President Trump from ordering further strikes on Iran. Same kind of a vote as we've seen the last couple of times. Democrats are just going to try this same thing, 47 to 52, largely along party lines with kind of one change. So Republicans and John Fetterman voted, no, we're going to let the president keep doing what he's doing. And then Rand Paul and the Democrats voted against it, saying, no, he needs to stop. He needs to stop. So this brings us over to the conversation about ceasefire expiration, maybe peace talks in the future. So I love the way this is framed from CBS as though they're shocked that this would be the answer. Media outlets said, hey, what's the plan? What tell us all of the inside details and the negotiation stuff. And yet again, you have people, whether it's Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, whether it's Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, whether it's Secretary of State Marco Rubio, whether it's the President of the United States saying, quit asking me stupid questions. Do I look like Obama? I don't care what Biden says. I don't look like Obama. To be clear, we're not telling you our plans. I'm not showing you my Uno cards. Carolyn Leavitt doing the exact same thing. Here you go.
I saw some reporting, again, bad reporting this morning, that we had formally requested an extension of the ceasefire. That is not true at this moment. We've remained very much engaged in these negotiations, in these talks. You heard from the Vice President directly and the President this week that these conversations are productive and ongoing, and that's where we are right now. I've also seen some reporting about the potentiality for in-person discussions again. Those discussions are being had, but nothing is official until you hear it from us here at the White House. But we feel good about the prospects of a deal.
Of course, that's what she's going to say. She's the press secretary. I saw people doing like full-on Charles Barkley NBA analysis of this. No, it's the press secretary. She's going to say exactly what the president wants to be said. Whether it was Karine Jean-Pierre, whether it was Sean Spicer, whatever it is. Whenever you get to a conversation regarding the press secretary for the president of the United States, they're going to deliver the line for the administration, especially when it comes to talking about military strategy. Now, we have some other news to shift into. This would be a major, just bonkers investigation out of the Manhattan Institute and the City Journal regarding tax dollars use in California. Before we do that, Radio Crew, we're going to send you guys to the commercial break and talk a little bit about some of the media side of things. Kind of a weird cyber attack from China that we kind of called a couple of days ago. So youtube.com/Daily Signal. You can catch that on the live stream. See you guys after the commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. All right. While they are gone, let's talk about the pretty awkward collapse. If the stock market did really well today, Hollywood did a really, really, really bad. Hollywood had the worst luck today, if you want to call it luck. And then a couple of tech updates. So, cellular modules from Chinese companies, a couple of other interesting bits of information. But first of all, a jury has found that both Live Nation and Ticketmaster illegally monopolized the ticketing market in a very high stakes antitrust trial. Essentially, what was argued, and so that this I'm pulling from the Associated Press here. A jury found Wednesday that the entertainment giant Live Nation, hosting tens of thousands of concerts a year, and then its subsidiary Ticketmaster, who sells all of the concerts, had a harmful monopoly over big venues. So if you would want to go to pick a random concert venue near you, it is very likely that you would have to go through Live Nation and Ticketmaster, who would then just slap on random fees. Like you've opened the app twice and so now you're paying extra fee. Or you didn't heart my emails that I sent you fee. Or you're really not going to want to use the bathrooms at this stadium fee. And you couldn't really do anything about it because the only people who were selling to that stadium that were getting things were either the scalpers right outside the stadium or the scalpers running the Ticketmaster app. So the jury found essentially that Ticketmaster was going to attempt to try in 22 different states, forcing people, no matter the ticket, to pay about $2 extra per ticket. Now, the judge said they had to order to pay that back. It was a 4-day deliberation. Things are starting to trend against the organizations, the corporations, that are just trying to slap random fees out there because people aren't reading the terms and conditions. That's the key here in long-term precedent that's going to change. The era of saying, you're not going to read that long list of paragraphs, we can do whatever we want. That doesn't count. That doesn't count. Essentially, the way that federal courts are viewing these very long terms and conditions that you aren't reading is like running up to someone on the street and screaming in a foreign language, moron says what? And if the person says what, you're like, got him. That's how the federal government and state governments are starting to view these long terms and conditions. You can't do that. Like the deceptive advertising campaigns, kind of the old of the, from about 1915 through about 1975, 85, that era is now ending on the internet stage as well. So it's going to be really cool to see how that changes over the next couple of days. Warner Brothers is also having a really, really rough day. Why? Very popular animated series, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and its much crappier sequel series, The Legend of Korra. They were airing a brand new movie they've had in development called The Legend of Aang, The Last Airbender. The entire thing has been leaked online. That is one of the biggest boo-boos you can have, but that's not kind of the worst part of the story. The worst part of the story is that Warner Brothers, the studio, cheaped out and didn't hire the voice actors that people know and love. An animated series, it's all about the voice actors. Just see the complaints from Disney's original Aladdin when Robin Williams was voicing the genie to the sequel when they had some other dude do it and it was awful. And Disney had to bring Robin Williams back for the third Aladdin animated movie. Little fun bit of trivia there, I know. Regarding Warner Brothers here, though, by this video being leaked online, the number one thing that's been shown is that hiring really crappy, low talent voice actors and maybe AI, there's some accusations that the voice acting here isn't even real, and cheaping out on a major movie, it's a big problem with Hollywood in and of itself. This cost Warner Brothers a good $50 million. Erased from existence. And that's on the low end. We're going to cut away and cover some other news, Chinese stuff, and then, transgender money for homeless people. Boy, I'm not kidding. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Don't go anywhere.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
You want news? We got news here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. So first of all, according to a new article from The Hill, cellular modules from Chinese companies, essentially a small part of the circuit board, the lovely green, black, or red board on the inside of tech, a couple of modules from Chinese companies have been found to be huge backdoor, come on in and screw everything up, take all of my information and give it to China, hacking opportunities for the Chinese Communist government. The companies QCell and Fibocom, who now control a large share of the global market for cellular modules, U.S. defense and national security officials are raising alarms, essentially saying that Chinese suppliers are doing what they've always done, which is try to provide backdoors so the Chinese have access to huge swaths of U.S. infrastructure. Now, again, a couple of weeks ago, there was this outrage from a bunch of basement-dwelling nerds on YouTube and other outlets saying, the FCC is so mean, Brendan Carr is banning Chinese routers. See, that's awful. This is against freedom. The libertarians did the same thing. How dare they? And Russians and the Chinese were using those devices as backdoors to get access to all of your crap and then sell them from China to what is becoming its number 2 largest export, your data to India so they can scam you with it. Isn't that just isn't that just wonderful and swell? Super stuff out of China. So again, the smart home era, the reason that the Trump administration needs to reshore tech manufacturing into the United States or to at least Taiwan is because the Chinese, while flooding the economy with a ton of really cheap, beautiful chips, it turns out that a lot of those contain backdoors that are trying to gain access to everything you have. So another massive L for the Cato Institute and all of those that pretend that China has our best interests at heart. And also one large middle finger. I should mention this also before we get over to kind of the big scandalous story. The FBI has also successfully extracted a ton of deleted messages from individuals who use the Signal app, which is seen as kind of an encrypted messaging application, meaning that if people are trying to tell you they have these super duper encrypted private messaging apps, they don't. I'm sorry, like the idea that encrypted messaging means that everything is super duper private, it's not. If you say it online, it's there forever, period. That was true in the 90s, it's true now. Now, that brings us over to something that is also not going to be wiped away. This would be a monumental scandal. This coming from Chris Rufo, a good friend of the show, and Jonathan Cho over from the City Journal. It's a project from the Manhattan Institute, in which California is providing huge funding through sex change procedures to homeless illegal aliens. Now, I recognize that that sounds like a headline straight out of the clickbaitiest, Breitbartiest article that you could fathom. So I'm going to clarify that though this sounds like a MAGA Facebook page's dream of a headline, It is 100% true. And I've read through this article. I've looked at all of the citation information. It is completely accurate. The state of California is providing, through multiple monetary channels, means, and methods, sex change procedures, from plastic surgeries and cutting off wangs to create fake vaginas, vaginoplasty, all the way over to hormonal treatments, the full range of estrogen, testosterone, hormonal treatments, to homeless illegal aliens. Quote, last month, we received a report from a whistleblower who claimed that illegal aliens were staying in San Francisco's homeless shelters. Following up on the tip, we visited numerous publicly funded shelters in San Fran and spoke to employees and residents about their policies, sometimes through a translator. We discovered not only that the shelters were housing illegal immigrants, but also that they were apparently housing a population of male to female transgender illegal aliens who had hoped to obtain free gender-affirming care. And to our shock, state and local governments are apparently providing it. So these videos are bizarre.
She's what? Transgender. What is her name?
Liza.
Is she undocumented right now and staying in the shelter? Can you ask her?
So the dude with boobs goes, yes, sí, está. Sí. Interesting, curious for sure.
She she's undocumented and she feels safe here. She has many different places around the city.
So some of these videos get pretty interesting. So St. Vincent de Paul's MSC South facility, San Fran's largest homeless shelter, and in 2024, again, this is according to the City Journal, signed a $66 million service contract with the city, meaning tax dollars in California, both state and federal, go to this homeless facility. That service agreement, all three forms of funding, local, state, and federal, went to this homeless facility. And at this St. Vincent de Paul MSC South facility, they are providing, free of charge, transgender care. Same at the Embarcadero Safe Navigation Center. Again, it's a crazy story. And when you would think, and the article says that when many Californians would think about homeless services, you would think food. You would think maybe a place for them to pick up clean clothes, water, maybe training for a job interview, obviously shelter from adverse weather conditions. You wouldn't believe that the place to go if you are an illegal immigrant and you're deciding, hey, you know what I really would like? Boobs. The place to go is your local homeless shelter. It truly is bizarre stuff. And of course, the California Department of Healthcare Services, which administers the Medi-Cal program, did not respond to the City Journal's request for comment. It's pretty crazy stuff and a pretty crazy investigation. On the other side of the trans LGBTQ plus 2IA issue, a major legal victory today, and this is courtesy of our friends over at the Alliance Defending Freedom. So to set the stage here, a couple of years ago, back in 2023, I was reached out to by some concerned parents over at the South Madison School Corporation in Indiana, Pendleton, Indiana, to be precise, that there was a policy being instituted at the school district in which counselors and teachers were forbidden from notifying parents if their children at this public school were going now by a different name, different pronouns that essentially were experiencing either via social trend or through medical, neurological, hormonal issues, feelings of gender dysphoria. So the school policy was, if the kids feel they're trans, you can't let parents know, you're not allowed to do this. And I said, okay, well, I mean, that sounds a little bombastic. And the parents forwarded me over to a couple of individuals acting as whistleblowers. Several of the counselors at the school, several teachers who provided to me multiple copies of documents, including emails from one of the vice principals and an individual from the superintendent's office that confirmed, yes, they were forbidding any of the, in Indiana, eastern central, kind of ruralish, suburbanish Indiana, any teacher or counselor from sharing that information with the child's parents. And one of the counselors that ended up going on record was a decades-long service, phenomenal counselor, Kathy McCord, and a wonderful, wonderful lady. Literally everyone in that district, before this scandal broke, had only the best things to say of her and about her. An incredible lady. And after she gave me this information and I shared the story, of course, asking her to go on the record, and she very bravely put her career on the line to go on the record about this stuff, shared it, became kind of a national scandal, and then the school district fired Kathy McCord. And there were all of these parents that came out of the woodwork, and for the next several months showed up to the South Madison Community School Corporation board meetings and demanded information, as parents have every right to do, about both the school policy and about the status of Kathy McCord's employment. And a couple of things happened. First of all, I called several of the school board members before the story went live, and they confirmed everything to me. Everything. There was a former president of the school board member, a guy by the name of Jim. He confirmed to me, yes, we have to do this, and we have to do this policy because otherwise we're going to get sued. And there's a lot of lawsuits going on right now. And I said, okay, interesting. And then after going to the school board meeting, they announced, well, actually, there's no policy. And also, Tony Kinnett, the journalist for the Daily Signal on this story, he lied about it. Now, I'm accused by reply guys and those on social media of being a liar all the time. But from a professional status, by which I mean when you are in a position where there could be lawsuits exchanged from a public form of official capacity, no one has ever called me a liar. I'm very thorough, as you've noticed by watching the show. I'm very receipts-based. I like to give you the receipts, the screenshots, the videos. And when I simply raised my hand at the end after, again, for the first time in my career, being professionally called a liar, even when I had whistle-blown from Indianapolis Public Schools, they never once called me a liar, ever. So when I raised my hand at the very end as they were closing out and said, hey, do you have any source, any data that says what part of the report did I manipulate? They accused me of photoshopping the documents. They then ordered the police to throw me out of the building. Again, I'm not kidding. Here's that clip.
Most of you know, I'm Buck. I've been on the school board for nearly 20 years or a little over.
This is Buck Evans, and he's a coward.
Now that this matter has come to an end, I would like everyone present here, if they wish, to have a copy of the original guideline. There's 100 copies here. If you want one, you can take one. You could have had one at any time. All you had to do was ask for it.
So he's saying that, we would totally give this policy out to anybody at any time. It wasn't hidden. So he was originally saying that, the policy's true, but it wasn't a secret. And then suggested the policy wasn't real at all. That's what he's trying to kind of straddle here.
It is never the intent of the board to keep anything from parents. I personally have been frustrated with the amount of time due process takes, especially when I know there was no wrongdoing on the part of this board. Mrs. McCord herself waited until noon of the last day required concerning her decision to go forward or not. The board did delay one meeting because a member was overseas on a long-planned trip, and we waited for their return to make sure all board members were present for this decision.
They're basically explaining why they fired her, and they didn't like that Kathy McCord, again, who is a mother and grandmother and had other things to do, and again, was seeking legal counsel at the time from the Alliance Defending Freedom. They really, really didn't like that she was again, kind of waiting around to make sure that she was doing everything correctly and by the book. That's what they're complaining about here.
Mrs. McCord admitted she did not tell the truth about providing Mr. Kinnett with the document or correct misleading statements within his article.
That's not true. Kathy McCord has never, ever, ever admitted or done anything of the sort. She's never said, I lied about, nope, not a thing. Not at all. Absolutely not. Now, at the end of this, after calling me a liar, I'll just fast forward to the end here.
Can you cite how the document was edited? Since you're leveling this claim that the document was falsified?
Yes.
Then you see Jim in the pink point at me for the cops, who then comes over and tries to escort me from the building. Now, here's the fun news, because I have to send the radio crew away to commercial in a second. As of today, the Indiana School District, South Madison School Corporation, settled to pay Kathy McCord $195,000. So Kathy McCord, after years of this lawsuit progressing, ended up winning in the end. And she was paid almost according to the settlement now, is paying almost $200,000. Incredible, excellent work. Thrilled to see it. Phenomenal stuff. Radio crew, we do have to send you over to the commercial break. We're going to continue on the live stream. Sorry, I know it's 7:45:49. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, yesterday, I mentioned briefly about the Alliance Defending Freedom, that they are a sponsor of the show, and there are reasons why. This is one of the reasons why. One of the reasons why we try to do what we can regarding the Alliance Defending Freedom is because they went to bat for Kathy McCord. And they said, no, just because you're a whistleblower who doesn't want to keep the mental illnesses or the things that children are struggling with from their parents because of some weird suspicion, oh, the parents are going to beat the kids with an iron and throw them out of the house and that other nonsense. That's, by the way, an excuse to keep things from their parents. Again, in a situation where those who are transgender have a 49% suicide rate, whether or not they receive gender-affirming care, and as we've also covered in the last month, are likely sterilized. The Alliance Defending Freedom went to bat for Kathy. And that is why those at the Alliance Defending Freedom are my friends. They're a Christian ministry. They're dedicated to advancing free speech, religious freedom, the sanctity of life, parental rights, and God's design for marriage and the family. They've scored huge legal victories, Exhibit A, but also like helping to topple Roe v. Wade, securing a landmark free speech win at the Supreme Court on behalf of graphic designer Lori Smith. They are fighting constantly some of our culture's most pressing issues, from protection of women's sports to stopping mail-order abortion drugs. The ADF relies on the generous support of people like you and like me. I donate to the Alliance Defending Freedom consistently to protect the freedom of Americans in the courtroom and in culture. So again, because the ADF very, very kindly is sponsoring the show, they're doing something a little bit special regarding our audience, which is that right now, every dollar that you give to the Alliance Defending Freedom, every dollar you give to the ADF will be matched. That means $25 becomes $50, $50 becomes $100, only while they have funds set aside to do matching. So if you go to joinadf.com/Tony or you text Tony, Tony, to 83848, you can have your gift to the ADF matched and hopefully see more cases and settlements like this for Kathy McCord. That's joinadf.com/Tony or text Tony to 83848 to double your impact for freedom. And again, those of you that have watched the show for a while know that I am really, really, really picky about sponsors. I am really picky because I like to kind of believe in the stuff that's going on, in the cause, to actually put their name on the show. And this is a clear case of payment why. So I'm absolutely taking a victory lap. First of all, because I despise in the professional setting being called a liar. You can call me a lot of things. You can call me a conservative. You can call me all the ists and phobes and isms that you'd like. But I am very clear about our research. We do things in the correct process and manner. And I am thrilled to see Kathy McCord, the counselor and whistleblower in this case, get almost $200,000 in settlement from the South Madison Community School Corporation. And the district did put out a little statement. Well, we actually probably would have won if all this stuff would have gone through to trial, but we don't really want to waste everyone's time and money. Sure. Yeah. Well, again, to Kathy McCord, excellent. Glad to see it. Thrilling stuff. Unfortunately, Congress didn't act as well today. Congress didn't, Congress absolutely did not do as well today. We're going to talk about that and then maybe some stuff regarding the New York City Gracie Mansion stuff, a little bit of fraud news as well. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Do not go anywhere.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Lots more news to cover after we cover some of this Congress stuff. Information coming out on the vice president and his fraud task force and the California hospice situation. Again, things in California, the tax money is going to very rough programs, and there are individuals that are trying to take advantage of the systems that you and I abide by under the guise of saying, oh, they're undocumented immigrants and therefore they're really special and wonderful. And therefore, really what you need to do is, you know, like you really need to kind of participate in all of this nonsense and look the other way on this fraud. This is not going to be something that Americans stomach. It's not. there's nothing here that I am seeing regarding, again, all of these situations of fraud in California, in Minnesota, various other states. Huge success from Vice President J.D. Vance. So regarding this hospice fraud, and I want to make sure that I get you the right quote here from it. Dr. Oz, as well as, of course, Vice President J.D. Vance, the Anti-Fraud Task Force in Los Angeles has suspended 447 hospice, 23 home health agency suspensions. It's an estimated $600 million. I believe that it was Fox News and actually Brett Baer that got into some of these details today. So, again, pretty sizable accomplishment for the vice president here. Check it out.
The Anti-Fraud Task Force, led by Vice President J.D. Vance, has suspended 447 hospices and 23 home health agencies suspected of fraud right here in Los Angeles. The total fraud estimated at more than $600 million so far. We talked about that recently with the CMS Administrator, Dr. Mehmet Oz. The number of suspensions is roughly a 539% increase from the 70 reported by Fox News Digital at the beginning of April.
Pretty sizable. So far, the fraud czar under the Trump administration has done considerably more than Vice President Kamala Harris did as the border czar, per se. So, again, very, very bizarre situations regarding the California state government. On the national level regarding illegal immigration and fraud, kind of curious stuff over on the House side. So a measure put forward to give Haitian migrants temporary protected status. I mean, they just get to stay here because things are really, really rough in Haiti. That passed in the House today, 219 to 209. There were 6 Republicans that joined Democrats in voting in favor of this. These would be Representative Maria Salazar of Florida, Representative Don Bacon, Republican of Nebraska, of Pennsylvania, Republican Brian Fitzpatrick, of Florida, Representative Carlos Gimenez, of course, out of New York, Representative Mike Lawler, and then also out of New York, Representative Nicole Maliotakis. And I'm not sure I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but what are you going to do? Now, Representative Tim Burchett out of Tennessee made it pretty clear regarding, again, yet another bill in temporary protected status, mass application here. Some interesting stuff for sure. Here's Representative Tim Burchett. Sorry, I want to make sure I actually have the right clip. There you go.
No, hey everybody, Tim Burchett is leaving the House floor. 3 bills, 2 of no real significance. The third, unbelievably, a Democrat motion to provide for consideration that legal immigrants status to Haitians. It provides legal immigrants status to Haitians who are already in the United States. So you have illegal Haitians here, and we're going to allow them to stay. And 4 Republicans. Look them up, who they were. You can pretty much guess, but go ahead and
look. It
look.
ended up being 6. By the way, the reason that he's throwing a little bit of shade here at Representative Maria Salazar, first of all, she's earned it. She's absolutely earned it. According to a report from Fred Lucas, my colleague over at the Daily Signal, in her Dignity Act, the Dignidad Act, the amnesty provision measure, and also a lot of other things in that particular bill kind of to sweeten it, but a measure that would allow those who are illegally immigrated, those that illegally immigrated to the United States before Biden took office, would just get to stay. They'd get to stay. Now, there are some kind of measures in the bill. I had a conversation with one of the bill's co-sponsors, Republican Representative Marlon Stutzman of Northeastern Indiana, Indiana's 3rd, about this. There are provisions that say those who stay would have to be registered, documented, all this other stuff, and would never get to become citizens. They would essentially be permanent legal residents. But Representative Maria Salazar is now out there saying, oh, they're going to become citizens too. And it turns out there's a couple of other issues, and again, that's putting it rather lightly, according to Fred Lucas and this crazy bit of bill analysis here. Crazy, by the way, that it's a really good spot from the Oversight Project. So some of the legislation she's putting forward, also a book that she has published in promoting this immigration legislation recycles a lot of old ideas and sources from left-wing think tanks, meaning that this kind of moderate Republican aim to kind of get you on board the amnesty train, it's not coming from independent sources. It's not coming from, Congressional Budget Office sources in its majority. It's not coming from right-leaning sources on immigration studies. No, she's going to left-wing institutions, activist groups, like the various NGOs, and not just, by the way, groups like the Brookings Institute, but also all kinds of high-level concerning institute, the Michael Clements of the Peterson Institute for International Economics, kind of on global trade and finance, suggesting these very left-wing reasons for allowing those to come into the country who are here illegally and stay. Why? Because it's probably financially profitable. Now, I did get a chance to talk to Marlon Stutzman about this, representative from, again, Indiana's 3rd. And when I talked to him about some of the things that Maria Salazar was doing, basically going out there and saying a bunch of insane nonsense, it's left a really bad taste with a lot of the other Republicans that were convinced this was more of a national security registration thing, kind of a general sweep to go through and take all of the people who are here illegally and document them and then decide what to do with them. That they are extremely upset that this is essentially being created by a Republican representative. It's being turned into this weapon to use against Republicans all across the country who might say, well, there needs to be some kind of a registration system in place. And if you're going to create some kind of bipartisan measure, whether you're Representative of Mike Lawler or you're Representative Maria Salazar, Stutzman told me without really mincing a lot of words, I'm not going to go advocate for that kind of stuff. And at some point, you are going to come to a situation where you see Republicans and Democrats dropping co-sponsorships of bills because you have some nonsensical, yet another podium Barbie running out trying to sound understanding and using left-wing sources to do it. How conservative. Sorry, radio crew. I was too in the middle of this explanation. Radio crew had to head out for the evening. I don't think that'll turn into a fine from the FCC, but you never know. So moving forward from this, just kind of some other quick news of the day regarding the New York City terror suspects, the two dudes that during an anti-Islamic migration rally outside of Zoran Mamdani's home, these two left-wing dudes showed up and chucked live IEDs over a protester's, or I should say counter-protester's shoulder. Again, an attempted Islamic terror attack. Well, those two guys have pled not guilty to terrorism and weapons charges in court today, which is freaking incredible. Again, they were hurling actual bombs over their shoulder at a crowd of individuals protesting Islamic migration in New York City. Emir Balat and Ibrahim Qayyumi appeared in court for the first time in shackles and jail uniforms today as a judge outlined next steps. Police say that multiple electronic devices were seized from their vehicle and homes as the case moves forward. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if here in a couple of days you see some kind of a judge making the case to allow them some type of well, you can kind of be on home arrest and have like an ankle tracking bracelet or some kind of, you're allowed to kind of hang out and do whatever while the trial proceeds. Because this is the kind of thing that we have come to expect from the New York City justice system. Again, it's truly some wild stuff here. I mean, again, I'm not that I was expecting them to get up and say, yeah, we're pleading guilty. They didn't even accept some kind of a deal which would come from pleading guilty, if there was one, for that matter. So, going to be interesting to see how this case proceeds. Again, you would expect some kind of actual action against Islamic terror threats in the country from the legislative side. No, you're not actually seeing any legislation being brought forward right now and passed through the House and the Senate regarding, again, Islamic terror threats, regarding, again, California's consistent fraudulent programs, or the giving of money to transgender procedures for the homeless. I'm sorry, that is just bizarre. It's just the most bizarre headline of all time. Because John Thune's really worried about the filibuster. Now, on the House side, you don't have all Republicans doing just the stupid stuff that Maria Salazar is doing. No. Hey, far be it from me to say that it's only, Republicans that are doing this kind of stuff. Thomas Massie of Kentucky is also engaging in just going full retard. And he's doing so in a couple of interesting ways. So there was a tweet that he threw up earlier. We'll come back to Sri Tanadar here in a minute. There was a tweet that he threw up earlier today that kind of caught my eye, caught a few others' eyes. He said, look, as chairman of the House Second Amendment Caucus, again, as a conservative and a guy who has a loaded firearm right next to the desk in case of fun visitors during the show, obviously very much in favor of Second Amendment stuff here. Thomas Massie, he says, well, as the chairman of the House Second Amendment Caucus, I'm going to testify before Senator Rand Paul, other libertarians, Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee today. And this hearing is going to examine ongoing threats to Americans' right to keep and bear arms. So again, as I'm sure you're already very well aware, committees are just political theater on camera. That's really all they are. Nothing super duper special about them. But some of us made the decision to actually go and watch what it was that Thomas Massie was going to say, because he never really misses the opportunity to take a swipe at the Trump administration. Maybe it'd be useful. What followed is one of the most bizarre clips, especially one coming out of the mouth of a purported Republican here. Thomas Massie.
Report. And what we've discovered through my friend John Lott, who's an economist and a statistician and an author, is that there's inherent racism in the NICS background check system.
Did you catch that? Thomas Massie is making the argument that we can't have background checks. Why? Because they're racist. Now, I'm just going to level with you. I think that when someone says something like that, it's going to come out of Jasmine Crockett's mouth, or Joy Reid, or Jennifer Welch, or Kamala Harris, or if he was able to speak English anymore, Joe Biden. That's what I would expect. I really wouldn't expect Thomas Massie to be like, what's really racist? Background checks.
Report. And what we've discovered through my friend John Lott, who's an economist and a statistician and an author, is that there's inherent racism in the NICS background check system. Because it's sloppy and they check only phonetically similar names, when you go to purchase a gun, you can be deprived of purchasing that gun. And the appeals process can get messy to prove you're not the same person that they think is the person who's prohibited.
So here's the argument. This is so dumb. So if my name is Tony Kinnett, and there's another Tony Kinnett out there, less handsome, perhaps not as articulate, maybe better with organizing clips for the show. That guy goes out and commits a gun crime. He holds up the Quickie Mart. And then I go to purchase a gun. If my name is Tony Kinnett also, there's a chance that when running it, they can say, hey, this Tony Kinnett guy, even if it's spelled differently, it's spelled wrong. It's not spelled Kinnett. It's spelled some different way. They might say, hey, are you this guy? That's right. A whole 5 minutes pause because they go, hey, are you this guy? And then I show my ID and I say, no, I'm Tony Kinnett. And then they go, wow, you're Tony Kinnett? My mistake, sir. Here is your H&K MP5. That's how that goes. What Massie is saying here is if there's a guy like Jake, there's a young lady named Jay Quellen, from the Key and Peele sketch there, and Jay Quellen sounds a lot like I don't know, Jelana. Then see, that's racism if they're phonetically similar names.
And they check only phonetically similar names. When you go to purchase a gun, you can be deprived of purchasing that gun. And the appeals process can get messy.
Do you know who that kind of logic would actually be the roughest for? People of Asian descent, also Amish and Mormon people who were using the Hezekiah, Hebediah, Obadiah kind of names. All right? No. So always good to see kind of the pearl clutching on the kind of weird anti-Trump Republican side shining through. Bizarre for sure. The same kind of thing from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's now suggesting that the country is divided into two groups. The faithful, the Tucker Carlsons, the Candace Owens, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Nick Fuenteses, and then Trump. And it's heartbreaking. Here's CNN, Strange New Respect, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Tell me something then, finally. Do you regret supporting Trump for president? And where do you think the movement and the country is headed? And will you position yourself to try to take, at least the Republican side back to what you believe to be the America First principles?
I don't regret what I campaigned on because nothing about me has changed.
Okay. I'm sorry. She's talking.
And in 2024, when I helped President Trump get elected, he was pretty clear on what we were campaigning on. What I don't support is the man that he's turning into be, a man that is hell-bent on war and destruction, has forgotten about the American people that are struggling so much economically, and has basically gotten incredibly focused on his biggest donors and their top issues. That's what I'm against. Going forward, I'm looking past Donald Trump.
I'm sorry. I love the donor. He's focusing on his top donor. This is the left all over again. They got the big oil executives and the Koch brothers are out there. They're saying, here's what you got to do. You got to get out there and you've got to be evil. And I just can't stand it. So many of the big donors is terrible. Again, no word about like the teachers unions donating to the Democrats. I guess that she's maybe saying that like Trump is listening to AIPAC, like the American Israel PAC. I would love to remind everyone out here that as far as AIPAC is concerned, it's not even in the top 5 other country-focused PACs. Like the AIPAC, not even in the top 5 for all of the conspiracy aluminum foiling that's getting. And even then, AIPAC is not like the bigger chunk of change as far as Trump's donor base is concerned. I don't know if you know this, Marjorie. Trump's been rich for kind of a long time. Like, he's been doing his own thing regardless of the money. And he's not exactly going out there saying, I'm doing it for the money. He's not taking a salary, Marge.
I'm looking towards a future that is focused on my children's generation. They're all in their 20s. And I think that's the generation that we should be fighting for. And that's the generation that's been largely failed.
I love it so much. I'm sorry. As a man who has just made it out of his 20s, I love this kind of crap because it's Kamala Harris. Do you see it? We just have to focus on the young people and the youth, or Hillary Clinton. I need you to Pokemon go to the polls. Or any other Democrat admit every single Senate campaign for Texas Democrats, whether we're talking about Beto or Colin Allred, or we're talking now about James Tellerico. They're all I'm going to reach the youths. Them young whippersnappers. I love them. They're great. They've been failed. It's all very, very, very bad. They've been left behind. Best of luck to you there, Sherm. Good luck.
So I will continue to be vocal because we have to look towards the future and how to solve those problems for the American people. And so that's where my focus lies.
Excellent. Exciting. Other little update here on the congressional shenanigans and drama. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro has launched a tip line in Washington to receive information regarding alleged sexual and inappropriate conduct by former Representative Eric Swalwell of California. If you or a loved one has been touched, groped, or something else by Representative Eric Bang Bang Fang Fang Swalwell, you or that loved one should contact 202-252-0809. Again, if you or a loved one have contracted Eric Swalwell, you may be entitled to compensation. Call 202-252-0809. So, going to be interesting, again, with that tip line in D.C., the more we see this story play out in real time, or I should say, the more we see the after effects of Swalwell's decisions and the open secret, it's looking kind of rough. It's looking kind of rough for all of the Democrats in his orbit, which is to say, all of the Democrats. Because Eric Swalwell was their bully boy, their little charge man, going out there and he was going to fight Donald Trump. And so he was in every committee yelling and screeching and a hooting and a hollering and all of the selfie videos. And then he'd get up and he'd be like, hey there, kids, you want to eat this Jell-O with a roofie in it? I mean, yikes. And everyone knew about it. And we played this on the show yesterday, but I'm just for good measure here. Right after Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats that we're going to get to, went through this whole I didn't know nothing. I didn't know. Boy, howdy, I didn't even know anything at all. And just nothing. You had Senator Ruben Gallego of Arizona, who, again, as soon as this man was asked any of these questions and also said, hey, you said that you didn't know anything, and now you said you've known for 6 months. So which is it? And the man starts sweating super duper hard. I mean, just Cops season 1, getting asked a basic question evasion here.
In the beginning, you said when you first heard these rumors a few weeks ago, that's when you called him. Then you said you've heard these rumors for years. So which one is it, Senator?
So I heard rumors of him being flirty.
And that wasn't an issue enough for you to not trust him to watch your kids or be close with him?
Because, you hear this, and then when you're close to somebody and you know his wife, you see this. You see that relationship. You know that, it maybe just isn't true.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I'm going to level with you here. I do actually know a former friend of mine who cheated on his wife. You know what I did? I told his wife. You know why? Because there's the sanctity of marriage. It's kind of an important thing. You know what? Don't screw up your kids and life in your marriage. Don't do it. You don't have to. Nobody's forcing you to whore around. Huh? It's like those old MTV, or I think they were prophylactic commercials about people tripping and then finding themselves in sexual situations. That's not how real life works there, Chief. Okay, no. And again, while he's out doing this awkward stuff, other Democrats who were kind of close to him or in his orbit are trying to do this. Oh, well, I didn't officially endorse him, and so therefore I'm in the clear. Representative Ro Khanna is doing this kind of thing right now. And again, it does give me the giggles.
I want to start with that question that the White House press secretary posed there. Why were Democrats on Capitol Hill silent for so long when, in many cases, we're learning some aspects of this behavior, alleged behavior of Swalwell's, was an open secret? Quote.
How come you was quiet, Ro, Mr. Friend of the Epstein survivors? I mean, unless you were someone who groomed young women for Epstein, then you're Ro Khanna's guest to the State of the Union. But, you're Mr. I see something, I say something. Oh, we got to get out all of the sexual abusers. Hey, how come you didn't say anything?
Quote unquote.
Well, look, I had heard rumors that he was a womanizer, and that's one of the reasons that I endorsed Tom Steyer in the race and didn't go along with a lot of the other California establishment that was lining up behind Swalwell.
I love that. So again, he's saying the reason. I was really concerned about Eric Swalwell. So instead of saying, hey, I've heard a lot of rumors about Swalwell's personal life that are unfavorable, and Tom Steyer doesn't have those rumors. That's why I'm supporting him. No, Ro Khanna came out and said Steyer's like the socialist, like the guy who has money but also wants to set up a bunch of socialisty policies, like a lot of the influentially elitist leaders, whether you're Bernie Sanders or Tucker Carlson, who believes that that's a totally decent things to do. He didn't say anything about it. You can't just say that, oh, that's actually the real reason behind the scenes. That's the real reason I was holding off.
But I certainly didn't know that he was abusing staff, let alone that there were allegations of rape or date rape. But this is...
Y'all, when you share a rumor with someone, you're doing a little of the gossiping, a little of the Miss Clara, you're doing a little of calling up Aunt B. You're going to talk about the dirtiest of the dirty in Mayberry. You're going to air out some laundry. When you're spilling the tea, do you share wide, vague stuff? Or do you share the spiciest details that you know of? Which is it? When you have the stuff that's going on, right? You know of the things, the stuff, what's happening. Do you say, you know what? I actually heard that this Eric guy, he's kind of a bad dude. He kind of flirts. Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of scandalous there. Ooh, no, you don't. You go, hey, I heard he date raped someone. And by the way, do you know why I say this? Because as I've said openly on the air before, there are conservative organizations that hold conferences that I will not go to. Because for a long time in the 20-teens era, it was an open secret that I would talk about on air that there was debauchery going on. There were older dudes hooking up with younger ladies. And I was and still am very, very, very clear. I'm not. I mean, there's a reason that you do not often see me running around to some of these big, huge kind of isolationist-y, populist-y conventions. It's not just, well, that's the real reason I don't endorse them or that kind. No. This stuff ain't difficult. I'm sorry. I do not understand why this is, I mean, obviously he's trying to do political cover here. I don't understand why this is such a difficult thing for some individuals in kind of the politics game to play. It's not that hard. Now, Democrat Representative Debbie Dingell, she's got herself one of them other theories, the Californian Democrat representatives here.
You haven't heard the rumors, but do you believe that the Democratic leadership had zero idea about any of this, given that you said there have been rumors circulating for quite a while about him?
But, you know, you would really be surprised.
I love it. I mean, you like waiting for somebody to break dance, you know, to start beatboxing, dropping in a beat there. You'd be surprised. So what she's about to tell you is that she don't hear nothing. I don't know nothing. I'm walking around bumping into walls because my eyes are shut. Like that Bird Box or whatever movie where like the blindfolded mom sitting in the boat or whatever. I don't know nothing.
But, you know, you would really be surprised at how everybody thinks that we all hear everything. But if you're somebody, I don't go out at night. I don't, since my husband died, I'm never dating again. I don't want to have any. You
don't have to go out and mingle. Like, you don't have to go out and date people to know rumors. Tim Burchett, we've had him on the show. He's like, when I'm in DC, I hate it there. I like sleep in my office. His staff still keeps him up to date. He still hears things. You are friends. Interesting. Sorry, I see we lost the YouTube signal. Curious. Well, I guess we're back now. That was very strange. Anywho, before I was rudely cut off by the makers of fine internets everywhere. Curious and weird. The case I was making. In this business, in any business, you learn the dirt. You're a teacher in a school, you learn the dirt on the other teachers. It's how it works. You're in a church, you learn about stuff on the other side of the church. You're in a club, you learn about those also in the club. It's how it works. Any HOA, any PTA, anything. How it functions. I could tell you some of the fun rumors all the way over from on the right to things, you know, that we talk about in the quiet, the hush, hush, whatever. Whether we're talking about the big networks, whether we're talking about the little networks, doesn't matter. There are always going to be rumors. This is a stupid argument to make. Don't make this argument.
I go to events and I work. I think that there are a group of people that do talk to each other at night, try to help relax, have social lives.
That's all Eric was trying to do, is just trying to relax. You know, you get done, you know, you're thinking, man, I've worked really hard this week. What I'm going to do, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to, maybe have a beer, have an affair. It's just like, a little Cosby-ing going on. Yikes.
But I do believe leadership hadn't heard about it because I know them, and I think if they had, they would have confronted it. And the one person I know, if she had heard it, would have decimated him, and that's Nancy Pelosi.
Ah, yes, Nancy Pelosi. Yes, very famous for not publicly urging Joe Biden to drop out of the race when he was dead. Not publicly urging the various other sexual misconduct cases on the left side of the aisle. Or very, making it very clear, a bunch of off the record, not in front of public comments on things like, Kennedy, killing the girlfriend, things like that. When it comes to the current Democrat House, you can have Democrat body slamming federal agents on camera. You can have individuals who took FEMA money to finance their own campaigns. In this case, again, as we know, Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick, or however you pronounce her name. You see Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries getting out there and saying, hey, it's time to resign? Nope. No, you're not. Incredible. Now, this brings us to the last kind of congressional drama, shenanigans, stupidity. One of these idiots is, of course, Shri Thanedar from Michigan. And Shri Thanedar, all right. I occasionally get a couple of questions. Says, Tony, I don't like it when you're mean about people's physical appearances. And I have a rule about physical appearance, things that I make fun of and I tease here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. Here's my rule. There's two parts to it. Number one, as soon as you make fun of someone else's physical appearance in any way, shape, or form at any time, you're fair game. Number two, I am absolutely okay with others making fun of my physical appearance. Pick a feature. Snaggletooth, dresses thriftily, the inability after years and years and years to make a definitive hair part, whatever. Pick a feature. Go ahead. I think I've got an eye sunken a little lower than now. That doesn't bother me. It does make for fun content and allows kind of my fast making jokes and wit to roam wild. However, if you cannot take the heat, you really should get out of the kitchen. So Katie Miller had posted a picture not too long ago saying liberal men aren't attractive. Now, if you have ever seen a lot of liberal men who look not too different than a lot of the kind of the butch lesbian crew, very thin, dresses like Justin Bieber in 2013. You know what I'm talking about, that kind of look here. A lot of those, this lady says, aren't attractive. And then Sri Thanedar, the man of the toupee and the Sharpied on eyebrows persuasion, the man who looks as though he mugged the person cosplaying Peter Baker on a Saturday Night Live episode, stole the wig and the eyebrows. These eyebrows are dude, his eyebrows, I'm pretty sure, are trademarked by Velcro. All right. He posts a picture of Stephen Miller and says, this is your husband. Not attractive. Now look, Stephen Miller is not exactly physically like standoutish. All right. Like there's nothing, like you don't see Stephen Miller and go, wow, this is an especially whatever. And I would say, again, we're going to be nice here. Feel free to be as mean as you'd like. I don't really have an original look, okay? I look like, and the Babylon Bee has made this joke directly. I've been sent this article so many freaking times. I look just like a Temu version of Matt Walsh, JD Vance, Cabot Phillips over at Daily Wire. I've gotten that comparison quite a bit. White dude, late 20s, early 30s, or mid 30s, whatever. Beard, glasses, blazer, collared shirt. It's not an original look. Stephen Miller's not an original look either. All right, there's like a slider from like thin all the way to the chubbier version of this, which would be like Brian Stelter. The dude with some hair and a suit and a sharp nose. Wow, original. So Shree goes after Stephen Miller here. And it is the actual Republican account that reminds him, when you are in a glass housing development of Detroit, perhaps don't throw stones. And the GOP responds, quote, does your brow artist take cancellations? Usually I go after the toupee. I'm also of the opinion, I don't think you need to draw eyebrows on. Sometimes you may not have big, thick, luxurious, testosterone-y, Tony eyebrows, You may not be gifted with that. You don't need to draw them on. It's not going to make you look that weird. You don't have to do that. And by the way, I think that if Sri Thanedar didn't wear the weird toupee, I think it'd look a lot more stately. Just throwing that out there. Also, again, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. A big hearty to Sri Thanedar. So really excellent stuff. All right, here just with the last kind of 6 or so minutes of the bonus tonus side of the show, I figured, take a little bit of mail time
on the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Now, welcome to a little of the old mail time side. So in our description on the YouTube side and everything else, you'll find a link to our Discord. You can throw things in the mail time chat over in the Discord there, and we will try our best to keep up with each and everything there that we got. So first and foremost, from the mail side, the mail time side tonight, a couple of really, really great questions. First of all, from Rebecca Down, says, hey, Tony, I hope this is where I can ask this question. Are you going to take legal action against the school board, South Madison School Corporation, for calling you a liar? So first and foremost, no. And the reason that I say this no is kind of built on two things. I didn't do this for Indianapolis for the same reason. Their defaming me really didn't provide a whole lot of damages. It really was quite a boost to the career. When awful people say mean things about you, that's a compliment. And wasting time and money in lawsuits are always a lot of time and money. I mean, them saying, oh, well, they lied. When it comes to a defamation lawsuit, you have to prove intent. And it's very easy to wiggle out of kind of like defamatory things. Number two, whenever you have a settlement on like a lawsuit kind of situation, the reason after a settlement you always hear the lawyer talking and not the client is there are usually some agreements that you're going to stop any social knife throwing. I reserve the right to air any of the 48 hours of accumulated footage that I have from Indianapolis public schools where they did a bunch of really, really, really crazy racial, sexual, and other junk if they ever step out of line. You say, Tony, that's blackmail. Yes, it is. Call it a public service. But I reserve the right to complain about anyone in Indianapolis public schools that I dealt with while I was there whenever I want. And the same with South Madison. I would absolutely love to make sure that any of the members of that school board I can call garbage, cowardly human beings who are bad at their jobs and have no care or concern for the community of Pendleton or Madison County, Indiana, anytime that I want. If I went through the whole legal case and ended up going through a settlement, well, then that's not always a guarantee. For me, it is far more valuable to throw punches forever and be able to talk about anything again. My entire career is built on receipts. If I'm allowed to kind of like draft receipts whenever I want, awesome, stellar, super. That's kind of the thing. I'm sorry. Our own Discord is currently roasting me, saying the only thing that I've ever lied about is being handsome. Thank you very much for that. Some other kind of questions on things. I'll take this. I think producer Jen is throwing a couple of things over. From Richard Lincoln, what happens when China hacks the holding company that has your paper asset he says in copper, maybe that means in copy, but has your paper asset or any paper assets? You mean like financial holdings? A lot of things in the United States are insured by the FDIC, meaning that if China or a foreign power comes in and steals a bunch of your money out of like a banking institution, that's insured. So this is one of the reasons why there are a lot of precious metals and other companies that try to lure you in by not being FDIC insured. Yeah, that's kind of a problem. And that would, again, kind of depends on how Congress or how certain departments of the government act. Certain reimbursements can be made. It depends. Next question from Teresa. How crucial is it for us to retake the Panama Canal? There's a moral answer to this, and then there is a kind of current geopolitical status answer. The current geopolitical status answer is we're kind of already getting as much of the Panama Canal for the current time and place. China has basically been elbowed out of it. They were going to build a couple of Chinese ports through the Belt and Road Initiative on the western edge on both sides of the canal, which would have essentially allowed China to close the door whenever they wanted. That's now ended. We've pushed them out of that. Now, from a moral and an American and a common sense standpoint, Panama should no longer be a country. The United States should take it, again, as a non-voting territory. Jimmy Carter is and was an awful president. And I'm sorry, all of them, well, he was a really nice guy, though. No, he really wasn't. Just because he was a peanut farmer doesn't make him super duper special. Giving away United States territories? No. Now, they don't have to become states. And I don't care whether we're talking about Alberta or Cuba or the Philippines. There are absolutely territories that the United States should consider owning because the quality of life would go up, the economy would go up. Again, think places like Guam, for example, the U.S. Virgin Islands. There's like a good American argument to be made, kind of on the moral and social ethic for the American administration of those places. In this case, we built it. We built Panama. We are the reason that it's not North Colombia. What? There's no like Panamanian culture. That's not a thing. No, absolutely not. Last question for tonight. One question. From Lisa. She had a very kind super chat with $1 attached to it. Yeah, let's make sure we get this question answered. Have you heard about Democrats' plan to get rid of the Electoral College, the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact? I'm pretty sure it's unconstitutional and what will happen with this. So the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is the idea that a bunch of states will pass legislation to then assign all of their Electoral College votes to whoever wins the popular vote. No, it's not constitutional. It hasn't been upheld in federal court. States have been threatening to kind of do this for ages. It hasn't really been done. So the idea of like, if Nebraska passes this, and then if a Democrat wins the popular, but Trump won the popular vote in Nebraska, Nebraska's going to throw all of its electoral college votes at the either or in this election. No. And the reason is because it violates the ability of Congress to certify electoral college votes, and then also to set up the congressional application and forwarding of a separate president of the United States in a situation where the vice president becomes the president and then a new vice president has to be chosen or appointed. When you start screwing with how states mess with elections regarding the electoral college, that doesn't work anymore. The Constitution kind of breaks in half. So they can pass as many little, we're going to stand up and do whatever votes as they want. Nah. I don't. And also, as we're finding out in California, they're going to screw around with that stuff. Again, when you look at the census situation in 2030 and the number of blue states that are going to be losing a substantial number of people and the red states that are going to be gaining a substantial number of people, I just with the California jungle primary system, if Eric Swalwell wasn't exposed, you would be looking at likely a three-way tie. And that kind of three-way tie at like 10-ish, 12%, with the two Republican candidates, the sheriff and Steve Hilton, being higher, would have meant that California's jungle primary system would have given Californians two Republicans to choose from unless they write in somebody in the general election. So Democrats' little special sneaky maneuvers do have a way of screwing themselves over, because again, Democrats don't actually think 10 years ahead. This is kind of the weirdest common fallacy, kind of urban myth, that Democrats are always thinking 10 years ahead to manipulate something on the way there. It's not. It's more where they find mush, they push, and then they stay there. And the new youth calls for something bold and extravagant. They really aren't looking out ahead. They're just constantly calling for the aggressive and the crazy thing every time they get a chance. Sometimes they gain ground. That's kind of it. And sometimes things do come back to bite them in the butt. I mean, again, one of my favorite quotes here on the show would be Mitch McConnell's warning to Harry Reid about the nuclear option, the 51 vote majority being used to get appointees, nominations and confirmations for presidential offices and federal judges.
Say to my friends on the other side of the aisle, you'll regret this, and you may regret it a lot sooner than you think.
That's the kind of the thing there. That's why there is still the very last vestiges of what I would say now poorly placed dyspepsia over the filibuster. Filibuster's over. Congress, and especially the Senate, is kind of broken. So that stuff aside, we'll be back tomorrow for a huge day for the Daily Signal. And when I mean a really, really huge day for the Daily Signal, I'm not joking. A lot of stuff is going to change. And I mean a lot of stuff in how the show looks is going to completely change. Nothing is going to look the same. So come back tomorrow for a pretty big day for the Daily Signal and, of course, the Tony Kinnett Cast. That all said, take care. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC, here live every weekday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Y'all, take care.